Hello and welcome. I'm Bigfoot, and this is episode 7 of my Let's Play series. So, just to start off with, I know I was going through my green chips before, and I'm going to carry on with the chips in a moment. But I just want to go through something that I've learned since I did my evolution of design video. So, in that evolution of design video, my baseline was to send half of the copper to computer chips, and then to send the other half to the other bits of the factory that need it, so low density structure, batteries and the like. But since I've been going through this SPM kind of process and understanding the correct proportions of stuff needed to achieve that, that rough guide has turned out to be a little bit wrong. So what I've come up with is another list of stuff, another rough guide. Well, it's not as easy as to remember, but it is definitely more accurate. So I've got two proportions here. The first one is for copper. So if you add up all of the copper in your factory, then 60% of that copper needs to go to green chips, 15% needs to go to red chips, and then the other 25% goes to the rest of the factory. So that, by going by what I said in my evolution design video, it's actually 3/4 of the copper go to the computer chips and a quarter of it go to the rest. That's actually quite a nice easy proportion. And then the second one, which I don't actually mention in evolution design, but it's pertinent to what we're dealing with here, is green chips. So once you've got those green chips from the copper, the 60% of the copper I just said, 18% of those 18% need to go to red chips, 47% need to go to the blue chips, and then the rest of the factory is 35%. So if you do those proportions, I mean, this is the only stage where we're talking about here. We're only talking about copper and computer chips at this moment in time because the factory hasn't developed any much further. But if you do those proportions, then the factory will be SPM proportion correct. That's probably the best way of putting it. At least in as far as my calculations are concerned, they might, I'm not completely overriding the possibility that my calculations are wrong. The spreadsheet, I like the spreadsheet. I think it works great. Is it wrong? I don't think it is. I have checked it. But anyway, I'm not ruling out that possibility. Let's just put it that way. So what I want to do now is I actually want to build these computer chips, the ones that I've been talking about. So that's what I'm going to do. It has just occurred to me that this is the first time I've made a normal sized base with biters and everything with SPM in mind. All the other bases I've worked on were based on my loose strategy of sending 50% of it to chips and 50% of it everywhere else. And that kind of ended. The last one of those I did was before the two 2000 bases that I did, the two 2000 SPM bases. And this is the first base I've worked on since I've gone through that whole SPM procedure. So this is the first time I've made a normal sized base with SPM in mind. That hadn't crossed my mind until this moment. Here's me thinking about I'm just building the same factory I've built before, but it really is it's those two 2000 SPM bases. That's what I mean. I've this general architecture I've used before with the positioning of things, but the whole analytical, where's the numbers going, that approach, trying to get as precise a close proportion as possible. Yeah, this is the first time I've done that on this kind of scale of base. Okay, so I'm just kind of trying to figure out what space I've got allowed to me for red and blue chips. So this is kind of a loose setup of red chips. There's 8 rows. It kind of fits there. I've got these 7 belts. It fits there nicely. So that might stay there probably. Then I need to deal with I need to make some copper cables for these red chips. So I think I'll do that kind of here. And then blue chips probably here. And then a lot across here, I need my racetrack. So this is one of the reasons why I set up that control panel at the beginning, is because I want to have multiple routes around this track. So you can choose certain sections to switch on and off. So there's going to be gates that switch on and off based on what options you select in those control panels. And this is going to be one of those T-junctions. So one of the routes is going to come down here and go loop back round to the finish line, and another route's going to come across here, and then this route will shut off. So at some point around here I'm going to have a route that comes across, and I'll use that to fill whatever space I have left. So it's kind of a bodging effort to try and fit it all in and what space I have left. If I don't have enough, then I'll rejig things. Let's see how it goes. So here is my thinking. I don't know if you know this about me, but I quite like my centerline geometries. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all of the assembly machines that I need. I'm going to split them in half. In one half I'm going to have, well, half of it, and then the other half I'm going to have the other half of it, and I have the belts all coming in and out, mixing in the middle, running down. So first up we'll have the copper cables, so copper will come in, copper cable will come out, come down. Then we'll have the blue chips, etc, etc. In terms of numbers, what I need is 32 assembly machines for copper cables, which is a nice number, but it's not. I'm not going to be able to use it because it's going to be governed by either blue chips, which needs 42, and it looks like it's going to, blue chips looks like it's going to be, oh pardon me, it's going to be occupying the same space as the copper cables. So what I'm probably going to need to do, because it needs to be divisible by 4, is probably do 4 rows of 11 to make 44 assembly machines, and then do the same for the copper cables that I need for red chips. So I'll have 44 in here. Then when I get to red chips, I need 188 of those. So 188 divided by 4 is 47. So 44 won't cut that. I'll need 48, which would be 4 rows of 12. So that is actually not as difficult as it sounds, because I'm going to have all these belts coming in and out. The probability is that the bottom part of the bus is going to be more sparsely populated. They're going to have less stuff, because all of these things are going to go across here and up, and only a few of them are going to come down to feed whatever I need for the red chips. So there's some opportunities to lose some belts of stuff here first. Damn your phone. Lose some belts in these processes first and gain some space down here. Or at least, you know, all I need is three extra tiles for one extra assembly machine to make 12 instead of 11. So that's eminently doable. I just need to set out the belts that come in and out of this in a way that uses that space and creates a bit more for my red chips down here. That is the plan. That's the plan. See, without too much effort, I've already gained the 3 tiles that I needed. So those 3 tiles are the copper input. In fact, I want to change that so it's going to come down in the middle and the output comes down the outside. That's wrong. Not a big deal. Then the second one is the blue chips out, and then sulfuric acid. None of these things need to go to the bottom half, so that's the 3 extra tiles I need. And I'm going to have a lot more than that, those 3 tiles, because I'm going to have green chips coming down here at some point as well. So, yeah, I'm going to have plenty of space for my extra assembly machines that I need. Okay, so what we have here is a little proof of concept that I've just built just to make sure that this can do what I want it to do. So this is probably not where it's going to need to go. It's probably going to need to go somewhere else, either to the right or to the left somewhere. I'm just working on it just to make sure that I can get it to work. So in order for my red chips, let's go back to Hell Mod. I need 78 green chips, and the belts coming in multiples of 30. They're coming in red belts. So I need 2.5 belts, just over 2.5 belts, that come down into red chips. So I've got the bottom 2 come down. The third one splits off because I'm going to need something that feeds down. A small portion of this belt needs to come down, and then the rest of it needs to go up. And then I've played with the rest of these so they all center on the same. So because I've got 3 coming down, 5 going up, they're all centered on this one. It's just something that I like to do. I like to plan this stuff out just to make sure I can achieve it, so that I go, okay, with confidence, that's what I'm going to build, even if I need to demolish it at some point in the future. I know I can do what I want to do. And it's quite a nice little junction. It's quite nice. It's nice, a nice way of approaching things. Right, so this one's come together much quicker than the green chips. I've managed to get it done more or less first time. I know it's not finished, but you know all of the stuff is in the right place. All of the right junctions work. I, you know, I'm happy with it. I mean, you could make a credible argument to say that the reason why it's fitted together so nicely is because Bigfoot, you've left this huge space and you allowed yourself the freedom to make this space whatever you wanted it to be. So if this had been needed to be a little bit bigger, then this would have needed to be a little bit smaller. And you know, that's a fair argument. That's an argument that I've made against myself. It is a fair argument. But you know, I play around with this stuff. If it doesn't work, if it doesn't fit, I don't sit around and accept it. I work around it. So if, let's just say that that was the case, if I didn't have this racetrack here and I wanted to fill up this space, then I would probably, because I've got slightly too many assembly machines down here, I would maybe make an extra row of red chips and then maybe split these into 4 so that, you know, I've got too many of these, so this could be more elegantly positioned. Maybe, you know, maybe I position that somewhere else. Oh, there's nowhere else for it to go. Essentially what I'm trying to say is that I would work with it. I would find a way. I would persevere until I got it, till I was happy. It's just fortunate that, I mean, the racetrack does give me opportunities to, and freedoms that you probably wouldn't allow you, that I wouldn't ordinarily allow myself in a normal factory. But equally, you know, I wouldn't necessarily just stop if it didn't work. I would persevere. And just to give you some, you know, just to give you some sort of baseline concept. So this is the 25. This is I left a racetrack width of 25 tiles. So obviously, if I was going to choose a dimension, then I would choose that this one be 25 as well. And if we measure it, that's what we have, 25 tiles. So, you know, I mean, I would say that maybe I've been a bit fortuitous. Maybe sometimes things just work out when it's meant to be. Sometimes things just work out. So, I just need to finish this off now. Just a couple thoughts I'm having while I'm building this. The first is what other arrangements I could possibly come up with if this hadn't have worked out the way that I wanted. And the answer to that is that I would have tried out vertical orientations, because that would have meant that I could have bridged the racetrack with more assembly machines of the same red chip process. You know, if the inputs and the outputs are all running vertically, then I could span that over the racetrack relatively straightforward, and I could put assembly machines on both sides. I could maybe do it in separate batches, so I could deal with all of red chips first, and then I could deal with blue chips with a much smaller block, but much more of them, with the copper and the copper cables squeezed in between. In fact, that's probably the way that it would work out best, is to deal with them one at a time. So I would just work out how many rows can I fit of red chips here. Divide that by the amount of total assembly machines required. That's how many I need in each row. Feed that in, and then I would do the same with blue chips and with copper cables, and try and come up with some symmetry with the numbers there. So I mean, there are other ways that I would approach it if I just come up against a roadblock. It's not just a simple case of me arriving. It's never a case of just because I've arrived first time here. I mean, the green chips needed a few reworks. Copper needed a few reworks. I'm sure I'm going to need a whole load of other reworks. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. That was the first thought. The second thought was that I'm aware that I've got, you know, a lot more assembly machines for copper cables here than I need, and I've just wasted. You know, I could just demolish the last 3 or the last 6 or so of each of these, and the factory would still work fine. And I would say, yeah, that's fine. I'm just filling the gap. I'm just putting something in there because I don't like that gap. Equally on the same note, red chips are awkward. Even when I was dealing with the bigger factories and achieving real economies of scale, the red chips still did not work out perfectly. It was just, the numbers are just really, really awkward. So all things considered, sometimes some of these processes, the numbers are just weird and you can't achieve any sort of perfection, and you've just got to accept a few more assembly machines than you may require. I mean, if I'm being honest, I did check out whether it would work with the blue assembly machines, whether I could justify it that way, but it doesn't. I would need more. So, it'll do. You know, nothing is perfect in this world. You just got to sometimes fudge it. There was another thought that I'd had, but it's gone. I don't know where it's gone. Okay, well, I'm just going to carry on building and see if it comes back to me. Alright. Whatever that thought was, it's gone, because I've spotted something else that's immediately taken over my mind. So here's me acting all confident and bullish. Oh, I got it right first time. I haven't. I've made a mistake. So I need 156 copper cables. That's 4 conveyor belts. But I've only allowed for 2. I have left this gap. Not that I was anticipating a problem, but I was leaving it there for elegance sake. There's like, these are the inputs, these are the outputs. But now I'm going to have to use it. But not only that, but I'm going to have to find a way of doing it elegantly. How do I get 2 belts out of this block in an elegant way? Okay. So I'm going to have to demolish something. It's only a minor change, but it is a minor change nonetheless. My 25 dimension is not going to be 25. This is actually becoming a bit of a recurring theme. So I also I didn't forget that, I've just missed it. But I've completely forgotten to put in my Roboport electricity lane thing, which obviously needed to go in the middle because it was an odd number. Now I've got 4 on this side and 3 on this side, so it doesn't work out as perfectly. And I've lost my junction. I really like that junction. It's worked out a lot cleaner and easier with this big gap in the middle, big block getting in the way. But I like my old way. I like the old junction. Yeah. Anyway, must continue. No rest for the wicked. That lost thought has re-entered my mind. So, obviously, I haven't unlocked blue chips yet. I know if it's obvious, but it doesn't stop you from building the infrastructure required for blue chips. Just because you haven't unlocked it doesn't mean you can't build it. In my experience, the only thing you can't build with red and green science, the only thing you can't is the rocket silo. But that can be easily replaced with a 9x9 rectangle, a square of conveyor belts. It doesn't have to be the rocket silo, it just needs to be something that's the same space as the rocket silo. I mean, I suppose it was a leap for me. I was like, oh, I can build this stuff. I don't need to unlock it. Whereas before I was kind of following down this path of unlocking it something, then building it, then unlocking the next thing and building that. So, oh no, I don't need to do it that way. I can build it first, put it where it needs to go, and then build around it. It just requires a little bit of good planning. Right, so that's the computer chips done, and I'm happy. This is how I solved the problem in the end of getting 2 belts out. Was to kind of, you know, the similar sort of approach that I was doing for my water barrel setup, just kind of in reverse. So, I mean, I could run it along here and then kink it upwards, but that looks ugly in my opinion. This looks like this is just an elegant way of solving it. And to be honest, it's not the usual way I would solve this. it just seemed to make sense for this occasion. That's probably the good thing. I mean, I've got a lot of different ways of solving these problems in my head. I've done a lot of these bases. I've solved a lot of problems in different ways. So when I have issues, I've got a pretty decent arsenal of stuff to go to. There's lots of different ways I can try stuff out. And I know it always looks like everything's jammed together, and that's because I persevere with it until I get it jammed together. Until I get the elegance that I'm looking for. I don't tolerate a design that I don't like. If I don't like it, I'll take it down and redo it. And I don't really care about how much time I'm spending. You know, what is, you know, I want to create something beautiful, and that takes time, and that's, as long as I can survive, you know, as long as the biters don't get me, and they're not, then what does it matter how long I take? It's still that from the first episode where I was like, well, you know, this is just patience. It's just a case of spending a little bit of time doing things. Anyway, so the next thing I need to be moving on with is the iron, which is going to go here. Now, if we look at the time lapse, let's just pull up the shot. I haven't really occupied all of the space, and you know, I've got to about just over the halfway line, and I've still got all of this space. If we go back to what I was saying before and seeing each field of view as an amount of time, I haven't filled up this time that I've got here, and I also want to find out how the racetrack lines up with how I'm going to line up the furnaces. So because I've got this extra time left in the field of view, I'm going to build some of the furnaces here and start building the train tracks as far as it will go, basically. Then I'm going to move the camera up, zoom it in, do the top half, and then do the iron, and then that should be this kind of main centerpiece done, and then I can start moving on with other things. Yeah, the jumble, I think there's going to be a lot to talk about with the jumble. And I want to start thinking about how all of these zones interact with each other. And I can't really think about that until I get there and start building it. So that's the process. I'm going to build some iron mines, and I'm going to shift the camera up and build the top half. Oh god, what's happening here? Oh, okay, we've got an incursion. You got me just as I was talking, you blighters. I mean, that's incursion number 3. That's the 3rd time they've made it inside my wall. I'd like to say it won't happen again, but let's be honest. It's entirely possible it will. This is just one of the ways that I use to set stuff out. So I know that my iron block, which is a red belt output, so I don't need 72 furnaces like I did with the copper, I need 48. So it's narrower than the copper. So because this was set out for 7 blocks of copper, I'm sure I've been through this, 7 blocks of copper, I know I'm going to have a big gap. And obviously I've got this racetrack, and I knew this was coming, and that's kind of why I wanted the racetrack to come through here, because I knew that there was a big gap here that I needed to fill in between the iron. Now on the other side I've got steel, so I can fill that space a little bit better. But on this side, I'm not going to have that same luxury. So I'm just setting things out. This is the width of a single block. So I need 7 of them. I've got 3. I'm going to have 3 up here, 4 down here, and that would mean that the racetrack needs to kink down. But you know, I've got all this lovely dead space here that's not being used, so I can lose the corner and bring the racetrack round. I think that's quite nice. So that's what I'm going to do. My mind is really starting to wander here. Okay, so in the context of design, what would I consider good design? You know, what is it that I'm looking for when I look at this stuff and I go, I'm happy with it, I don't need to move it. What is it that I am personally looking for? What I'm looking for from my own personal designs is I want to fill the space in an elegant way. I don't want big gaps. If I have to use a few assembly machines to fill a gap, I don't mind that. But sometimes big gaps appear because of bad design, because I've positioned things in the wrong place. In terms of good design, I would say that you are trying to match the theoretical a picture in your head of how you want it to look. You're trying to match that with the reality of actually building it in the game. The two aren't necessarily compatible. Sometimes you have to build stuff in such a way so that the factory works, so that it functions and can do the right things. And sometimes you need to sacrifice, well, sometimes I feel like I need to sacrifice elements of beauty and elegance in order to pursue that perfect factory, because ultimately the factory takes precedence. The factory needs to perform, and that takes precedence over any beauty that I'm trying to achieve. So for me, good design is that perfect balance between the two. It's not just a physical, it's not just the real beauty of what I see on the screen. It's also the knowledge that all of the numbers fit together. That the logic holds, that it's a combination of all of those things, and it's something that's not fixed. If I go back, I've still got all of my old save games. I feel like I should go through like my first ever Factorio map or whatever, see what that looks like. But what you consider a good design is relative for you, and it is for me as well. It's all relative what we all consider a good design, and that will change over time. The designs that I did 3, 4, 5 years ago, I'd look at and I wouldn't be happy with them. Even sometimes now, I'm going back and looking at some of the designs that I did for some of the time lapses I did years ago. Like, well, not necessarily years ago, like 18 months ago or so. And I'm thinking, I could do them better now. I've got better strategies. It's a process. It's something that you can't just. I don't think it's something you just get. I think it's just a feel that you feel for what you're looking at. When I look at this stuff, I ask myself the question: have I done the best that I can? And if the answer is yes, if I don't think there's any other way to achieve it, then that's what I will stick. Even if sometimes I will accept some inelegance if there is no other way of achieving some part of design that needs to be done in a particular way. As I said, the requirements of the factory take precedence over what I think looks good. What I'm trying to achieve is both. That's what I'm trying to achieve. But it's always a balancing act. It's not always clear cut. Sometimes you got to make sacrifices along the way, and that's good design. That is good design. So if you pursue something just for elegance sake, then that's probably going to not be good design, because you're sacrificing other parts that need attention. So yeah, I go for a lot of thoughts when I'm building stuff like this. I mean, this is the first time that anyone's actually listening. This is another weird thing about this process. I get to talk my thoughts, and people listen. It's weird. This isn't a lake that I'm filling in. This is a freaking ocean. I mean, there's no land. I mean, there's a little bit of land, a tiny little bit of land down here, creeping into view. But I'd never expected it to be this much water when I started filling it in. Man, that is a lot. Okay, so that's more or less the edge of the time lapse now. Let's have a look. So I don't really want to go much further right. So I need to start filling in this space. So I'll start building some train stations. Also need to build in another loop. So another one of my racetracks is there's gonna be another T junction here. So I need another up and down. 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 So I need another up and down racetrack, I need another part, I need all sorts. I have only one real issue with the base so far. Just the one that I can think of, well, that comes to mind at this moment in time. And it's that there was an efficiency of space that I could have used here. This is my copper setup that I've built already that I didn't use, mainly because I didn't see it early enough. And it's the kind of thing that I used to pride myself on, getting these sorts of efficiencies of space. And when I noticed it, I was like, it was kind of too late. I'd already positioned a lot of the factory around here, and I didn't want to move it all again. So I just like, I'll take it, I'll accept it. But over time, it's ground on me. So here's the thing. Because I've got the inputs for the furnaces coming in from below, and then the outputs coming from going above, there would have been nothing stopping me from using the same lane to bring in the ore and then to bring out the ore. I could have moved this whole bus almost to commingle with the inputs and the outputs together in the same space. I could do the same here, bring this one in here and bring this one out. And it is something that I've done before many times. So it's been sitting in the back of my mind, grinding at me, just absolutely grinding at me, because I should have fixed it when I had the chance, and I didn't. And now I'm completely stuck with it. However, that doesn't mean that I'm stuck with it factory wide. So, iron mines, crashing cars, iron furnaces. This is exactly what I've done, and it works out so damn sexy, so damn flipping sexy. Here's the input going in, here's the output coming out, and that's the bus. So that's all of it. It's just, it works. Why didn't I do it for the copper? Why didn't I do it for the copper? Just a minor bit of frustration there. That's the only place where I've got imperfect thoughts. Let's put it that way. So that's it for another episode. In terms of this one's been a funny episode because I haven't actually it's not going to span all that much game time. It's only going to be 4 or 5 hours of game time. I suppose there's been a lot to talk about. Well, or at least there's been a lot that I've chosen to talk about, and thus I've filled up the time that I feel like I have available to me with words rather than action on the screen. Yeah, I mean, more progress is being made, slowly but surely. I'm getting the bits done, the important bits done, this startup bit done, which for me is the real engine room. This is the driving force of the factory. All this, the iron, the copper, the steel, and the 3 computer chips. Once I've got those sorted, I feel like the bulk of the work of the factory is sorted, and it's kind of relatively downhill from there. So I hope it's been good. I hope it's been entertaining. I hope you've enjoyed me listening to me waffle on. See you next time.